Yo, what's going on YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and we are taking a look today at the Toronto Maple Leafs. So the Toronto Maple Leafs had an interesting offseason so far, right? Kyle Dubas wanted to address the goalie situation. He's got a completely new tandem this year. We're also taking a look at the Matt Murray trade, which is a part of that. But they also made some interesting signings in free agency. So we're going to go over all of that today. So obviously the headliner for the Toronto Maple Leafs this offseason was bringing in the goaltending situation, addressing it. So at the draft, they moved Peter Mrazek and their first round pick to the Chicago Blackhawks for the 38th overall pick. So they moved down 13 spots to get rid of Mrazek's contract. Kind of interesting. So they get a really good move here. I don't know why Chicago did it necessarily. I guess they were really high on that player. Chances are they could have gotten that player in the second round at that spot. So Toronto, for Kyle Dubas, he may have still gotten his guy in that second round 13 picks later. So kind of a head scratcher there for Chicago. I thought they would have maybe tried to use more leverage and try and get something more out of it. Kind of an interesting move by Kyle Davidson and the Blackhawks, but the Leafs benefit. That was a really good trade by Dubas, looking back at it. But then a couple days later after the draft, well, now they need a new goaltender, right? And who do they bring in? There's a lot of rumors going around for a week before that trade went down that Matt Murray was going from the Senators to the Leafs, and it did happen. Matt Murray, a third-round pick and a seventh-round pick to the Toronto Maple Leafs. In exchange, the Ottawa Senators retain 25% of Matt Murray's remaining salary. That's 2 more years left on that deal, and future considerations, which is Pierre Dorion maybe doing a favor in the future for the Leafs. Now, here's the thing. So when you look at this trade, right, if I'm the Leafs, this is a good trade, right? Because of the Mrazek situation, they're retaining some salary, and on paper it looks good. Matt Murray had a great end to the season in Ottawa, right? And Dubas kind of said that in his, post-free agency press conference. He said we liked what he did at the end of the season. But then there's the big issue. And the big issue is, can Matt Murray play 55-plus games next season? Because if you're relying on Ilya Samsonov, I've watched him play. He struggled in the AHL with the Hershey Bears. He struggled in the NHL with the Washington Capitals. But he was really good in Russia. So he just hasn't adjusted to the North American game. You can't expect either of those goalies to put together 55-plus games. I expect it to be more of a 1A, 1B situation because I just don't think they're that, they're not consistent enough. And I think that's where the Leafs run into some issues here. And the bigger problem with Murray is he's injured a lot. So if he starts the season, plays great for a dozen games, and then gets another concussion, then Samsonov's playing every other night. And that's when things go wrong. Now, the good news is they do have Shalgren still behind Samsonov. So it's not the worst thing in the world. And I believe they still have Joseph Woll, right? They do still have him in the system, former BC guy. But I just wonder how good of a move this is in terms of the actual player, right? Murray as a goalie, I can tell you, listen, he won 2 straight Stanley Cups as a rookie, technically. So he's got the winning pedigree. But the second he went to a lesser situation in Ottawa, he didn't play well. And even when the Penguins' defense started to get a little weaker, he didn't play well. So I guess the Leaf sentiment here, if you're an optimist, is you look at the Colorado Avalanche, right? Their goaltending was not good, right? I mean, you could argue Darcy Kemper, Francouz put up, I think he went 6-0 in the playoffs. That's Pavel Francouz, right? And Darcy Kemper wasn't this world beater, but the defense and the team in front of that team was just so good. But I don't know if you can rely on that going into this year because, again, it's a different market. It's a different mentality. The Leafs, listen, you guys have a big, hardcore fan base. everything you do will be judged. And it is so, like, tiring, mentally tiring that by the end of the season, those goalies are in their head or they're just mentally drained. And I'm not putting that on Jack Campbell this year because Jack Campbell was great in the postseason. You can't blame him, but that was a good fit for him in Toronto. I don't know how Murray and Samsonov are going to do in the bright lights of Toronto. Now, again, Samsonov, who's trying to reclimate his career and try and get things back on track, is playing in Toronto 30 to 40 games next season, gonna help him do that. Again, these are all if, ands, or buts, and we don't really know the answer to that. And you'd like a little bit more clarity for a team that is trying to win a Stanley Cup next year. You'd want to be a little bit more certain because it seems like when things can go wrong in Toronto, they tend to. And that's why I just hope Dubas has a backup plan for if Murray, 20 games into the season, gets hurt, or by Halloween, you're pulling out Samsonov every game, and then your tandem is Samsonov and Shalgren probably till the trade deadline, hopefully when Murray can come back. So you're just running into... I just hope he has backup plans, and that's where I worry here with the Leafs. If he's really safe knowing that Shalgren can step in as a backup and be a good 1A, 1B with Samsonov, great. But if you're relying on Murray definitely being your number one guy and making that work, it's not going to happen. I truly don't think it's going to happen. You look at his record, lots of injuries, did not play well in Ottawa. So, if he's got the right mentality, that prove them wrong mentality, and he's healthy, he could be a very good goalie there. But again, there's just a lot of ifs and buts that I'm not totally sold on yet. So let me know what you guys think of that situation with Matt Murray, because it could be really good. It could also be really bad. So what are some of the moves they did? So they bring in Nicholas Aube-Kubel, a former Philadelphia Flyer, came to the Colorado Avalanche, I believe, last season, came to the Avs, won a Stanley Cup, right? Was a big piece of the parade situation, right? He was totally hammered, so he'll be nice and relaxed going into the summer here. Adam Gaudette comes in, former Vancouver Canuck draft pick, went to the Ottawa Senators last year, played decent, again, the Ottawa Senators weren't very good, so it's hard to gauge how good he could be. Dennis Malgin comes back to the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's had some mitigating success. He comes in on a league minimum contract, so another forward. They also bring in Jordy Ben on the back end. I'm surprised he's still kicking around, but Jordy Ben comes over. Interesting pickup there. He's been playing in Minnesota the past couple of years. Victor Mete, who, of course, people found a way to bring up stuff from when the Habs beat the Leafs in the playoffs. He said, we're going to kill the Leafs. The Leafs are terrible. And he was tweeting out some things he probably regrets now that he's a member of the blue and white Maple Leafs. So kind of interesting to see how that kind of transpired. And obviously, Twitter and all the social media was attacking that because it was kind of funny looking back, right? So that was that. Ilya Samsonov signs a 1-year deal, $1.8 million. Already kind of talked about that. And this is the most recent development. And I really like this move here. The Toronto Maple Leafs bring in Kalle Järnkrok on a 4-year deal, $2.1 million per season. I think this is a pretty interesting move for the Leafs because he is sort of replacing that Ilya Mikheyev slash... who did they lose 2 years ago in free agency? Last summer, Zach Hyman. He's that kind of player, right? He's probably going to be a guy that can go on the penalty kill. He could go on the power play. He's a good complementary piece. And depending on what you think of their middle six, right? You've got Nick Robertson right now on the second line. You've got Kerfoot, Kampf, and Engvall on the third line. You immediately bump one of those guys down and you put Kalle Järnkrok in. Either that's the second line with Tavares or the third line with Engvall and Kampf. I would be pretty confident with that. That's a much needed piece to the Leafs that I think nobody really was talking about, adding some depth back, right? Because now you lose Mikheyev, you lose Hyman in back-to-back years. You got to replace that with somebody, and Hyman can do that. And Järnkrok can do that. He's also got the scoring touch as well. Like I said, he could probably jump on the power play as well. He's a really good depth piece that can score some goals other than relying on the big guys, right? relying on the Matthews and Marners and Nylanders and Tavareses, right? It takes a little pressure off of them, put some of that onto Yarncroke. So I think that was a last-minute move here that just happened by the Leafs, but I think a really good addition to their lineup that, quite honestly, considering the guys they've been losing here, right? They lost Campbell, they lost Lyubushkin, they lost Mikheyev. It's been a rough offseason for them in that regard, but to move out Mrazek, to bring in new goalies, bring in a bunch of guys on league min contracts, Dubas is trying to find, he's kind of spraying it, right? He's kind of spraying the machine gun and hoping it hits the target somewhere, right? And that's not necessarily a bad strategy for a team that is a cap team, doesn't have much room in that regard, and these guys are willing to take league min contracts to go to the Maple Leafs because they see the potential there. You see a Jordy Ben go there. He's going to add some size, some grit. I know people roll their eyes when I say that, but the Leafs get somebody that they need, and you hate to say that you need a Jordy Ben, but God forbid there's an injury, he could step in there, right? And you don't know what's going to happen with the younger guys, like a Justin Hall or a Timothy Liljegren this season. So to have just that backup, especially defensive depth, is incredibly, incredibly important. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you think of the Toronto Maple Leafs moves so far this offseason? We knew it was going to be a summer of crazy moves because they didn't win the Cup, but that wasn't the case. Kyle Dubas making moves that I'm a hard critic, and I'm a hard critic on Dubas recently over the past couple of seasons, but I have to say, he did what he had to do, right? He changed the goalie tandem. He was able to move Mrazek out. He added some grit to the blue line, added some depth to the forward group. You can't really complain. He made the moves that were necessary. Again, on a cap-constrained team, that's what you have to do. I know TSN and Sportsnet have been ripping him apart because that's the easy thing to do. But let's see what happens, right? And I think that's all you can do. They have the guys there. They've gone through the hurt. They've gone through the pain. Is this finally the year? Is this finally the year that they can maybe get to the conference finals, maybe get to the Stanley Cup final, and get past the first round, right? Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Go Leafs.